another talk as part of the open design lecture. It's titled Introduction to Digital Accessibility. In this session, we will discuss digital accessibility, including web content and social media accessibility. We will understand what accessibility really is. Why do we need to create an accessible digital space? How can we make our digital spaces accessible? And different attributes of digital accessibility. This talk shall be delivered by Shakul Sonker. Shakul is an entrepreneur and technologist who has been working to enhance the accessibility of our digital infrastructure to make it inclusive and accessible for everyone. He co founded iSTEM, a digital accessibility company that develops the technology to resolve the digital accessibility challenge. Shakul has 6+ years of experience in the accessibility domain, and he has been recognized by organizations like UNICEF, GSMA, Microsoft, and Meta, amongst others, for his work. This talk is also part of the Universal Design course run by the Department of Design. With that, I would invite the speaker to begin with, and yeah, looking forward.
Thank you so much, Mihir, for such a nice introduction. Just checking if I am audible for everyone.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, awesome. Uh, yeah, so I do not prefer using a slide deck a lot, but today, because we are doing it in online mode, and also, as they say that an image describes 1,000 words, or how many number of words I don't exactly remember, but that is why I'm using this short deck. It is going to be, it's not going to be the monologue where I'd be speaking and you guys would be listening to me. So if you have any questions in between, you can either put it up on the chat and or stop me in between, ask clearing your doubt. I really want it to be more interactive rather than me speaking and you're hearing. This presentation is basically up for you to really visually understand what we are talking. Won't be going of depth of anything because it is titled as Introduction to Digital Accessibility. So we would be just giving a touch base of what accessibility really is, why really we need our digital space or our digital offerings accessible for everyone. So as you see, this talk is titled that we would be talking about accessibility. We're talking three key components of accessibility as we use in our daily basis. First of all, accessible web. This covers all the different websites that you use on daily basis, different softwares, uh, anything and everything, mobile apps or whatever, right? Second is your digital content, the various content that is being produced, and it could be any type of content, whether your academic or non-academic content. So anything and everything that is digitally produced in these days. And thirdly, because it's an era of social media, and we would love for everyone to include everyone when we are using the social media. And that is why it is important for us to make our social media also accessible. Next slide, please, Ankita. So we are beginning this with talking about web accessibility. And when I say web, it not only means website, but basically it all talks about various websites, various apps, mobile apps or desktop apps, or anything and everything related to whatever you see on the internet. Next slide, please. Uh, First of all, it is important for us to understand why we need accessibility at all, right? Just to understand financially, right? It's a digital era. We do have several tech companies. In fact, IITs have their own website. Everyone is catered as a customer or consumer of your product. It is important for us in this age that we should include more and more users or enhance our customer base for our product to be more financially viable. This is the financial aspect of it. Second is that we need to also make our infrastructure accessible so that it can be used by everyone, so that it becomes not only accessible but also usable by everyone. And that is why it is important for us that our product or whatever we build in this era that can be used by all types of users, including people with disabilities as well. And the use of digital accessibility, if I have to give you the numbers, 96% of the available web is inaccessible for one of the largest world's minority, and that is people with disabilities. You see, disability can be two types. One is visible disability, other is invisible disability. Several people may not even know that they are suffering from a disability, right? So they might have be suffering from different challenges on their day-to-day life. When we try to make our digital space accessible, we basically provide them a hassle-less experience, a user-friendly experience that makes their experience more enjoyable when they kind of use their your product, whether it is a website or software or a mobile. So it is important for us to really understand the different persona of our customers slash users, and then we design things according to their needs so that it can be widely used and celebrated among different type of users, including people with disabilities as well. The question comes why this digital space becomes inaccessible for people with disabilities, right? So just to give you some information or some background around a disability and assistive technology. So people with disabilities tend to use different set of assistive technologies. When I say assistive technologies, basically means technology that helps them on a daily basis to access the web. For example, those who are blind or low vision or partially blind, they use something called screen readers. The job of this screen reader is nothing but to read whatever is being displayed on the screen in real time, right? Those who are deaf or hard of hearing, they use something called closed caption to watch a video. The job of this closed caption is nothing but just to also present in text whatever is being described or said in the video, right? And these are different type of assistive technologies that are used by neurodiverse people, that are used by people having motor disabilities, and so on and so forth. So our idea really is how do we design our web so that it becomes easily accessible for all these types of users. Now, what happens when the web is designed or it is developed? They mostly do not comply the accessibility guidelines. So accessibility itself has a widely known guideline. It's called WCAG, right? Web Consortium for Accessibility Guidelines. It's widely accepted across the globe. But what happens because, and I'm glad that you have a course over here in universal design, but most of the engineering and design schools don't, right? And that is why the output that these engineers or designers will come up with is mostly become inaccessible for users with disabilities or users who would be using some sort of assistive technology. For example, if even if you are wearing a spec, that itself is an assistive technology for you because you are not able to see your computer screen with a naked eye, right? It could be as smaller than anything else. So we'll have to make our web in a manner so that people who are using this assistive technology, it becomes user friendly for them as well. And the question becomes, how do we make it accessible? So there are several components. We would be talking about them one by one during this presentation. These techniques would be headings, table headers, link text, label controls, keyboard focus, uh, live captioning, and so on and so forth. We will discuss all these attributes one by one, and in between, if you have doubt understanding any of those, feel free to ask a question. Next slide, please. Akhtar. So this component basically talks about heading and why it is important, right? Especially those who use screen reader or those who are blind, low vision, or visually impaired, or neurodiverse, they rely pretty much on the information that is given through the technology and not by how human made, right? So the way you structure your content is very important for you. Like visibly, if you enlarge the size of your font and change the color of the font, one can easily understand that it is a heading. But when a software like Screen Reader reads it, it doesn't identify it to be a heading because it is a visible information, right? And that is why it is very important to give this information to the software technically because it only understands programming language, right? And that is why whenever you are designing a prototype using HTML, it is important to use uh, heading tags such as H1, H2, H3, and so on and so forth. What are these heading tags basically? It basically helps a user to understand what is a heading and what is a paragraph. When you say H1 becomes a title heading, which should be the topmost heading of your uh, website or software or a mobile app. The very first heading, imagine you are reading a book. So the title, chapter of a book, so the title of the chapter has to be heading level 1 or H1. The subheading becomes heading level 2 or H2. Subheading becomes heading level 3 or H3. So each level, when you go down, they kind of subsede the above level. So the concept over here really is that heading level 1 cannot ever come under heading level 2. It's always heading level 1, then heading level 2, then heading level 3, and so on and so forth. Why it is important? Because when screen readers or various assistive technology, when they try to read the content using these assistive technology, this level is also conveyed to the user. For example, if I am using a chapter or reading something on the website, before telling me what is written in the heading, it will also tell that this is heading level 1. So say if the heading is my name is Shakul. So my screen reader will announce it, heading level 1, my name is Shakul. Right? That's the kind of impact it creates so that either user also understand between the difference of paragraph and the heading. This is one. And the second use case of defining your heading structure right, it provides better document navigability, right? You will be able to navigate through the document very easily using the keyboard shortcuts. Now, because most people use mouse, they can easily jump across the different region of the page, right? But some people who have limited use of mouse or some people who use a screen reader, they don't use mouse. They completely access computer using the keyboard. So when you create right structure in your document, in your website, they kind of easily scan through the section by section. So if I have to move on to the next heading, I can simply press H on my keyboard and this will take me to the next heading. Again, I'll press H on my keyboard and it will take me to the next heading. So if I am trying to access a specific section of the website of the software, it becomes easily for us as a user with disability using some sort of assistive technology to easily navigate through the content that has been presented to us on the website or the document. Next slide, please. Next attribute really is column header over here. So whenever we define the table in our content, it is important that the first row of and the first column become headers, right? There are specific tags in the HTML. Uh, Basically, you can see in the HTML there are tags called th. You can use those tags and define the right headers of your column. So what happens whenever someone is trying to access the data? Uh, Suppose I am on the 50th row and 70th column and trying to access some sort of a cell over there. Before reading the data, the screen reader also announces what are the corresponding column headers and the row headers, so that this information becomes much more meaningful to the user who uses something called a screen reader. In the image, you can also see what are the good example of how to create a table which has right column headers, row headers. This is the right formatting of creating an accessible table. Next slide, please. This is the link text, right? So what happened in most of the time, we just rather than actually describing the purpose of the link, we sometimes say click here, click there, right? User with no context, they might get confusing. This is very confusing for those who have neurodiversity, some sort of specific learning disability, and also those who have visual disability, right? They don't identify that if they will click on this link, where this is going to land them. So rather than specifically leaving the link blank or just say here or there, if we specifically mention that what specific purpose of this link is and where it is going to leave them. So rather than saying click here to know more, instead we can say click here to know more about the city, right? So that user knows this is this. If they click on the link, it will give them more information about a particular city, and this will also open them in the new tab or the same tab or whatever or however. Uh, uh, Over here, you can see two examples, uh, good example and the bad example. The purpose really is that we have to be descriptive and specific in terms of what we really are trying to communicate to the user through our designs. Next slide, please. This is pretty much about the label controls. So what happens most of the time when we create forms or the fields, right? If the buttons are unlabeled, the user might not able to understand what this button click will give them, right? So if you see in this example that I've given over here, instead of clearly labeling a submit button, right? If you don't label it submit and just make a visual symbol to it, right? When user something who cannot see your visual symbol, for them it will be read as blank. So they don't know if they click on this button, it will submit their form, right? So it is very important for us in the uh, in the backend to describe what this button is going to do. In this case, it is going to be the submit button. So it is great, and we are no against the beautifying our website or our software. But what we are really saying that along with the visible symbol or visual symbol that we provide, it is also important for us to describe in the backend what this button, these controls are going to do this for us. That becomes much more easier for users with certain types of disability and also for any other user, right? It just makes the experience much more easier for me to be able to, for the user to be able to understand what this GD is trying to communicate. Next slide, please. Uh, this is keyboard focus. As I mentioned in the beginning, that some users only use keyboard, right? And they don't use mouse to click here and there. So sometimes what happens when we see certain websites, there's a term called keyboard trap, sorry. Keyboard trap basically means when a user who does not use mouse, they cannot go to the certain section of your website or they cannot move here and there freely as you are able to do it with mouse. Similarly, some of the buttons, they are sometimes mouse clickable, right? So what happens when you try to press the enter key or press the space key to click on the button, it does not get clicked. So we should avoid all those kind of stuff. We should not make a button which is only mouse clickable. We should not. We should follow the guidelines so that our website or the software does not become keyboard trap. And there are specific guidelines to all of this that I'm discussing with you. If you want, we will be able to share with you the right links wherein you can go and read more about all these things. But as a hindsight, it is important for us to make our website uh, easy with keyboard navigation as well. Likewise, we are doing it with mouse as well. So in this example that I have given over here, you can see there are three buttons, right? They basically say that uh, morning, afternoon, and evening, right? In the right example, you can say the cursor clearly identify afternoon, which is to say that when someone is trying to access afternoon through the keyboard, they are able to do that. But in the bad example or the incorrect example, three buttons, they all look like the same, which basically means that a person who is using the keyboard, they aren't able to move across the website according to their interest. Can we go to the next slide? This is a lack of caption on your videos. Basically, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is very important for our deaf and hard of hearing people to provide closed captioning for them. As we are speaking, it is also important for them to be able to understand. And let me tell you, whenever we try and make our infrastructure accessible, you may think that it is targeted to people with disabilities, but on the contrary, it becomes easily accessible for anyone and everyone. Taking this specific example of closed caption, this though may have a purpose that it is specifically for people with hard of hearing, but even then, those who can hear well, closed captioning helps them also understand the language better, right? If suppose I do not understand the accent, if suppose I have slightly different of understanding the language of a person, if suppose my internet is not very good, or the voice has cut in between for me, if the closed captioning is provided, it is important for me also to understand what our speaker is trying to communicate, and also I can read it below the top. So though it may be considered as an accessibility add-on, but it becomes useful for anyone and everyone as well. There's a term in accessibility that we say build for one and make it available for many, right? So we may think that it is built for accessibility needs, but on the contrary, it actually benefits the much more larger audience that we can imagine. Go to the next slide. This is accessibility testing, no calling out, but I just wanted to quickly show you there are websites. In fact, ISTEM also have accessibility testing and remediation services, but I didn't want to include our work all the time. That is why I specifically came up with another website called DQ, and I deliberately chose IIT Hyderabad's homepage and the about page. These are the different errors, as you can see, right? So there are tools which can identify all the accessibility violations, and there are ways with which we can fix those accessibility bugs as well. So yeah, DQ is a very good website. If you reach out to us, I can also able to help you make your infrastructure or digital space much more accessible. So before next slide, please, Ankita. Slide 11. Before jumping up to the document accessibility, I am observing the audience is much more quiet. So just stopping here for a minute. If anybody has any question at all related to web accessibility or any clarification query that you want to ask at this moment of time.
Yeah, hi Shakul, Seema here. I had this question on this closed caption. I quite didn't understand what is the difference. Can you explain how it really, what is open caption and closed caption? What is the main difference?
So, Professor, basically the closed caption really is time stamped, which is to say that at a very specific time, what the speaker can is speaking, it kind of simulate that experience. So, for example, if I said something on the 24th minute and 53rd second, it basically stimulate the exact what is being said when it is being said uh, in the talk or in the conversation. So basically, it is very close with the video. That is why it is called closed caption.
Okay, okay. Yeah, there is a question in the chat which is reading, how does DQ or other tools like it work to assess accessibility for web platforms? What parameters does it assess?
So basically, there are different parameters and there are set of guidelines. As I mentioned, WCAG, there's a whole list of guidelines. Basically, we say that your infrastructure should be perceivable, your infrastructure should be usable, and it should be accessible for all types of users, right? So there are some 3, 4 types of big parameter, and under which there are heading different sections and subsections according to which they kind of analyze. There's a whole list of guidelines of accessibility. So there are two types of accessibility testing happens. One is the automated tool, right? They are all using the static HTML code of your website of your tool, according to which they will come up with some violations. If can we go to the slide 10 again, Ankita? If imagine in this, what I did, DQ has a accessibility checker, right? I just simply ran the accessibility checker on the IIT Hyderabad website, and these are the violations that we found out. But this is a software, so it's a tool, right? It may also leave some of the errors. that might have been there. If you do the second and the more intense accessibility thing is called accessibility audit and remediation, in which we use the combination of technology and human remediation, with which an expert of accessibility kind of take the full access of your website or the software or the tool, and they kind of do the end-to-end accessibility audit and remediation services, and they kind of prepare a report. It's called VPAT, voluntary template for accessibility, right? Then they prepare this report. They also kind of sit with the engineers, as I mentioned, uh, that accessibility is not taught very often in the designs and the engineering schools, right? So they will have to sit with the engineering team and the design team to really explain them what are the different attributes, uh, how do we make them accessible, what are the code level changes that we need to do, what are the design level changes we need to do. The best scenario in this case would have been when the product was born accessible, right? Where everybody knew about accessibility and they would have created a content or a website or a software which is from the beginning itself would have been accessible. But in most cases, that is not the case. And that is why once it is developed, we have to conduct the accessibility audit and get it tested. So I will not be able to tell you each and every attribute against which they tested, but some of the attributes I've already discussed in my talk that they identify, such as color contrast, right? Those having limited vision or those having neurodiverse or mental disability, they find it difficult to identify uh, the color. So it is important that we have 1:10 ratio between the paragraphs uh, and the headings of your content. Line spacing, there should be enough 1:1.5 ratio between the two lines so that those who have difficulties in understanding focus, they can also read the content easily. So just like this, there are different parameters against which the accessibility is tested.
Yeah, there is one more question. Any example of website that has been ranked high in accessible design?
Uh, Unfortunately, there is no ranker, but there are several websites which are very accessible. Especially, most of the accessible websites are in the United States because there is a very strict law against it. It's called ADA, Americans with Disability Act. It was passed in 1990. So there is a provision that if an owner does not make their content, website or software accessible, they will be sued in the court and they will be levied millions of dollars as fine. So rather than people making paying these fines, they try to make their infrastructure accessible. So over there is a penalty model that they have adopted. But in India also, we are coming up with some fines against different companies. Recently, well-known food ordering app received a penalty of not making their app accessible for the large audience. So we are also going very high on accessibility and the wider use of our technology. So no, I don't. I cannot call one application or the website which is highly accessible, but yeah, mostly the web is accessible in the West, unfortunately. So we briefly discussed about web accessibility. Some of the similar attributes we will discuss in the content accessibility as well. Slide 12, Ankita, next slide. Uh, Again, why it is important? So kind of a similar argument. It is right. First of all, information is the right for all of the citizens of the country, so for anyone and everyone. That is why in 2005 we also launched something called Right to Information. Right. If you don't make your content accessible, imagine the population that you are barring to consume that information, right? Because content is the source of information. So it is very important for us to make our document, first of all, readable or navigable, right? For all the users, right? Also to ensure equal access to information to all the users, right? And when we do that, it basically we are opening up the access of information. Just like with the website, we are able to attract our customer base, making our softwares and websites more accessible and more user friendly. With content, we are basically opening up the information usable and accessible for everyone, and information that can be accessed across different users regardless of their abilities and disabilities. So there are also some of the attributes that I would want to discuss in talk, such as accessible templates, style, all text, accessible tables, and so on and so forth. Right? We will discuss them one by one. Next slide, please. Slide 13. So these are some of the accessibility template, right? Most of us on our daily basis use MS Suite to create content, right? Whether we are writing a report or we are creating a PowerPoint or we are, making a data sheet. So if we are writing something or preparing something, we use MS Word. If you are creating a presentation, we use something Microsoft Presentation, the PPT, the one that I'm using right now. If we are creating a spreadsheet, we use Microsoft Excel, and same thing on Google also, right? Google Sheet, Google Doc, or Google Slides, and so on. So whenever we try to use these options, by default, all of this tool also suggests us the accessible templates. So we always encourage people that if you don't have much of a knowledge about accessibility, you can pick up this one of the accessible templates which are already given on all of these tools. So if imagine you are creating a presentation, you can see in this image that there are various accessible templates that is being displayed there that can be picked up that makes your presentations more accessible. Specifically, if you are a teacher slash professor and you have a class of diverse students, it also becomes important for you to make your presentation inclusive for all and accessible for all. So the students who may use assistive technology, they can also access your content. So yes, there are Microsoft has taken care of accessibility really well. There is also another feature in all Microsoft tools, which is called Microsoft Accessibility Checker. So once you are done working on your document or your presentation or your data sheet or spreadsheet, you can quickly check how accessible it is using the accessibility checker, and it can also tell you all the violations that you would have made and also let you correct those violations in your document or presentation. Next slide, please, Andrea. Uh, in this component, we basically talk about style. As I mentioned, the headings and heading level in the website when I was talking about web accessibility. Similarly, in MS Word as well, we have headings and subheading structure which is given. So rather than we making these headings manually and visually, we should use inbuilt heading and subheading structure which is given in the Microsoft Word, right? There are heading level 1, heading level 2, heading level 3, and so on and so forth. The purpose remains the same. One, user is able to understand what is really paragraph and what is really heading. Two, it makes your document easy to navigate, right? If I want to, if imagine I have a whole book in a PDF format in 16 different chapters, and all the chapter headings are labeled as heading level 1, I can quickly search my chapter by going through first heading level 1, heading level 1, and so on and so forth, rather than pressing and searching and remembering the name of the chapter and then searching, right? So it makes the document, likewise, you just turn around the pages of the book, it just works like that only. You are quickly moving across the document without a hassle, and that is why heading level, it is very important for you, right? What you are seeing is a screenshot of a Word document wherein it is displayed how do we select right kind of headings. And please don't worry that I will also share this presentation for your future reference with Professor Seema. So if any of you would want to use this as a future purpose, feel free to use this presentation that I've created together. I am trying to make this as a public document so that anyone and everyone whoever wants to use it can really use this presentation as a support document. Next slide, please. This is alternative text, right? So the problem is that most screen readers, they don't identify images. So if you simply add an image in your document and you don't describe how that image looks like, Someone who's blind will not understand what you are trying to convey. So at the beginning of my talk, I said one image conveys 1,000 words. For blind people, one image basically conveys nothing, right? Because the screen reader doesn't read the image, they don't identify the image. Whenever someone tries to read the image, it just says image. If the document is a scanned image, they say alert colon empty document, right? So it is important for us to provide an alternative text to each of our image. It's a very easy process. There is a small edit box in which you can describe your image in 1 to 2 sentences, right? Easily. And once the user with disability or visual disability, they are trying to access this image, rather than what is the image is showing, they can read the alternative text, which by the way is not visible on the screen. It can only be accessible with the screen reader. So you are adding the alt text, but your content look wise makes no difference. You can see over here, right? The how do we add alt text and how does it look? Next slide, please. Again, accessible tables. So just like in HTML, in Microsoft Word also, we have table creator that basically have you uh, create your row and column headers. Another thing to keep in mind is that we need to also get away from merge cells, right? Where one column is spanning 2, 3 columns, 2, 3 rows, and so on and so forth, because it becomes very confusing, especially for those who are learning disabilities. So we should try to create simple tables unless necessary, right? And try to avoid merge cell as much as possible. Though it becomes easier for us, it might become difficult for some of the users. So unless necessary, don't use merge cell. Set headers in the Microsoft using the Microsoft Word. Your first row and first column becomes column header in that case. Okay. Uh, Over here, you see an example of accessible table. So for example, I'm seeing class A, name, marks, right? Up, these are the 3 headers that I have. Similarly, class A and class B are the different classes, right? So if imagine I am just reading this entry called 50, right? It is telling me that before saying 50, it is also telling me this is the marks column and class B row, right? So if I'm using the screen reader and I'm just reading this random 50, it makes no sense to me. But when the screen reader also announced this is marks 50 for a class B, right? Then it makes much more sense that this is not random 50, but also it relates to, because visually it is very easy for us to understand which row, which column. But someone who doesn't see it, it becomes difficult for them. That is why it is important for us to kind of one make our define our column and row headers well. Secondly, uh, avoid merge rows and merge columns. Next slide, please. This is again just like web accessibility. We have document accessibility over here as well. Right? So we over here, I have provided the iSTEM content accessibility services. We kind of provide all sorts of work to make content accessible for anyone and everyone, right? So you any kind of document that you have, whether it's academic, non-academic document, or circular, or anything at all, you can simply convert it into accessible format. We have 2 types of conversion services available. One is our include bot, right, which is available on WhatsApp as well as on the web. You can just simply upload your inaccessible content and it converts into accessible format in in a couple of minutes. But given that it is AI powered, mostly large language models, it may have some inaccuracies. So if you want a 100% accurate document, we also do manual remediation service to make your document uh, complying all the international accessibility guidelines. Next slide, please. The last component that I quickly test is going to be around social media. But before that, I just wanted to take a pause for another minute and see if anybody has any questions. Sure. So one last section, probably take another 5-7 minutes, and then we can leave last 10 minutes to open up again for question and answer. Uh, Social media, it is very important for us that when we post on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, it is widely accessible for different types of users. I have said it again and again, don't want to repeat that, but yeah, it is important for us to include different types of users. Uh, how can we make our social media accessible? There are different attributes to that as well. Uh, Basically, first and important is alternative text, which I have described in detail in my previous section. Second is accessible hashtags. Ankita, move on to the next slide. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, yeah, you can see over here the accessible hashtags and mindful use of emojis. We will discuss all of them in detail. Slide 20, please, Ankita. So basically, this slide talks about alternative text. I've already talked about it in my content accessibility, uh, but just wanted to give you a heads up. No matter whatever platform you are using, there is an option to add alt text. Whether you are using an Instagram, whether you are using a Twitter, whether you are using LinkedIn, whether you are using Facebook, or anything and everything, right? There is a small edit box in which you can write a couple of words to also describe your image, right? So that it becomes widely useful and understandable and accessible for different types of users. So I strongly encourage all of you, just spare another minute of your life and also describe the image that you are putting up on the different social media platforms, right? It is important for others. You never know, right, who's reading your content and who would be benefited out of your content. So it is important to just describe your image in 2 to 3 words and nothing else. Strong recommendation from my end. Next slide. This is accessible hashtag. So whenever we say hashtag employment for all, hashtag this, hashtag that, we should always use camel case typographical. It is basically nothing, but just put a first letter on capital. So when we say, suppose I'm a big cricket fan, so I'll just give you a cricket example. Right now, Champions Trophy is going on. Tomorrow is the semi-final between India and Australia. And if I'm saying hashtag India will win Champions Trophy 2025, what I will do in hashtag India I capital will W capital win W capital Champions Trophy again C capital. So what happens if somebody hears this content, they will hear India will win because there is no space in between, right? If we don't make the first alphabet capital, the screen reader considers India will win as a one word rather than it is considering a one phrase. And it will try to come up with all these alphabet together and jumbles up. India will win or whatever. I don't know how it is called, right? It's a long word. So it is important for us to use the camel case so that users who have some sort of who are user of screen readers, and let me tell you, there are a lot of users nowadays depending on voice. Given that the advancement in AI, we are coming up with a lot of voice agents also, right? So it is so important for us also to make it accessible when you are hearing the same kind of content. There are several ebooks that are being published, right? Some of them are not human-read ebooks, but automated generated ebooks, right? So for those softwares also to be able to understand your words better, it is important to use captions. So in this example, the good example is hashtag social media with S capital, M capital, and the bad example is hashtag social media with all the letters small. Next slide, please. Uh, this is basically use of emojis. We are using emojis so much, even I use it in my daily conversation. But we suggest the limited use of emojis. basically try not to replace each and every emoji with your words. Some of the emojis may not be accessible, or they are just too much in visual in nature, which might create some sort of a problem for some users. So it's a recommendation that if you can try and not replace a lot of sentences or words with emojis, that will be an ideal. Next slide, please. So towards the end of my presentation, quickly wanted to, uh, follow up with what I discussed in this presentation, starting from HTML tag for headings, such as H1, H2, H3, uh, making the link text and the button text descriptive more in nature, so that people don't get confused, right? Keyboard access, we talked about keyboard accessibility, that there is a term called keyboard trap, so we should make our website accessible for those who are using keyboard as well. We also described quickly video closed captioning, for which we also had a question, right? So for each video, we should try and provide captioning. We talked about accessible templates of the documents and different styles, which are all provided in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. We discussed about alternative text to your images, and why it is important, and how do we add alt text briefly in your content as well as social media. We just discussed the camel case typography in your hashtags and the limited use of emojis in your social media post. Next slide, please. So these are some of the resources that I strongly recommend. As somebody was asking, what are the different criteria for accessibility? You can go to W3C website and read more about web accessibility. If you are more interested in knowing the document accessibility, you can view Microsoft support article on the accessibility. If you are more interested towards social media accessibility, you can use Facebook's this article on social media. So it's not that it's something new. All these big tech companies are already aware of it. That is why they've curated all these resources. Meta has this article on Facebook accessibility, right? Microsoft has for document accessibility. WC3 has for web accessibility. Last slide, Ankita. Uh, so yeah, with this, I just quickly close this presentation. But thank you so much for being such a nice audience. I hope either people understood or they didn't bother. uh, we'll take the former, that people understood. And yeah, I mean, if you have any kind of queries post this session, please put it up on my way. I'm very much active on LinkedIn, so if you want to connect me over there and ask your doubts or anything at all, feel free to do so.